y'all, Jamie here with Country Diggers. Today I thought I'd do a story on Tom Dooley. Do y'all remember Tom Dooley? Now, when I was in third grade, we had a teacher who played the piano. So we had a piano in our classroom, and every time she would show flashcards of the times table. And every time we made it through the times table without a mistake or anything, she would give us a Friday off to sing folk songs and stuff like that. And one of the songs was Tom Dooley, The Legend of Tom Dooley. And we learned that song in the third grade. And I just wanted to tell you about him. He's a real man. He was a real man. So stay tuned. All right, first off, I want to sing the song. I know I can't sing good, but anyway. It's by the Kingston Trio. They sung it. It's hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. I met her on the mountain. There I took her life. Met her on the mountain. Stabbed her with my knife. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. This time tomorrow, reckon where I'll be. Hadn't been for Grayson, I'd be in Tennessee. Hang down, well now boy, hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Well now boy, this time tomorrow, reckon where I'll be. Down in some lonesome valley, hanging from a white oak tree. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. Well now, boy, hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Poor boy, you're bound to die. 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 All right, that song is by the Kingston Trio. But anyway, we are going to be reading from NorthCarolinaGhost.com. Okay? The Legend of Tom Dooley. In 1866, a woman named Laura Foster was murdered in Wilkes County. A man named Tom Dooley, D-U-L-A, pronounced Dooley, was convicted and hanged for the crime. That murder and the name Tom Dooley lived on in one of the most famous folk songs ever to come out of North Carolina. The traditional version of the story casts Tom Dooley as a dashing, handsome Confederate veteran. When Dooley returns from the war, he meets Laura Foster, a young woman who was being courted by a school teacher from the North by the name of Bob Grayson. Foster fell in love with Tom Dooley, but so did another woman, Ann Milton. Milton was married, wealthy, beautiful, and insanely jealous. Learning that Dooley was in love with Foster, not her, Ann Milton stabbed Laura Foster to death in a jealous rage. Tom Dooley was blamed for the murder. Now, we don't know for sure if he really stabbed her or it was this woman, Anne, what's her name? Anne Melton, that stabbed her. We don't know for sure. But anyway, Tom Dooley was blamed for the murder. Dooley fled, headed for Tennessee. Bob Grayson headed a posse to hunt down Tom Dooley, and the posse dragged the fugitive back to Wilkes County. Dooley realized that it was Anne Melton who had committed the crime. Tom Dooley's sense of chivalry made him unwilling to see a wealthy woman dishonored and facing a death by hanging. So Dooley confessed to a murder he did not commit in order to save Melton's reputation. On May 1st, 1868, Tom Dooley was executed for the murder of Laura Foster. Grayson returned home to the North, and Melton slowly went insane from guilt. Well, we don't really know that. They think she had syphilis is what it was. But anyway, she slowly went insane from guilt, and years later, as she was on her deathbed, the trees around her house filled with black cats, and the air was filled with the smell of burning flesh as demons came to take her soul to hell. It's this version of the tale, a complicated story that ends in the death of an innocent man, that became immortalized in a folk song that circulated in North Carolina for nearly 100 years before it was made nationally famous by the Kingston Trio in 1958. It was also made into a movie that starred Michael Landon from Little House on the Prairie, and I've watched it recently. It's pretty good. North Carolina, for 100 years, it was made nationally famous by the Kingston Trio in 1958 in a way which shows how much the ways in which we define music categories has changed in the past half century. The Kingston Trio recording of the ballad Tom Dooley reached #1 on the Billboard R&B charts, even higher than its near top placement on Billboard's country charts. It's said that Tom Dooley wrote the song himself. The legend has it that he was singing it, strumming along on his banjo, as he sat on top of his own coffin, riding in the wagon on the way to his execution. But the actual story behind the story of Tom Dooley and the murder of Laura Foster are what might be generously described as slightly different from how the song tells it. Learn the scary truth behind the legend of Tom Dooley. Okay, we'll go into the scary truth, the legend of Tom Dooley. The real story of Tom Dooley and Laura Foster is a lot more complicated than the version told in the song, and it involves a lot more syphilis. Tom Dooley was born in the deeply impoverished mountains surrounding the Yadkin Valley in 1845. Sometime when he was a fairly young teenager, he began sharing the household of James Melton and his wife, Anne. Melton was a successful cobbler and had lost interest in his much younger wife, and happened to be about the same age as Dooley. With James Melton's consent, Tom Dooley and Anne Melton began sharing a bed in Melton's cabin, James Melton slip alone. Dooley left the Melton household temporarily when he volunteered for the 42nd Regiment of the North Carolina Infantry. After the war, he returned to the hills and resumed his unusual household arrangements. But then things began to get even more romantically complicated. Pauline Foster, a distant cousin of Ann Melton, had moved into the Melton household when she was hired as a servant. It must have been a small cabin because soon Dooley and Pauline Foster began having an affair. In a remarkable display of open-mindedness, Ann Melton didn't object to her lover's new arrangement. In fact, she joined in. Okay. So Ann Melton, Pauline Foster, and Tom Dooley were all sharing a bed in James Melton's cabin. James Melton was still sleeping alone. As if this wasn't complicated enough, Tom Dooley soon met another Foster. This was Laura Foster, another cousin of Ann Melton, who had recently followed her cousin to the area. Laura Foster was no stranger to the company of men, and as soon as she and Tom Dooley were carrying on in an affair seemingly completely separate from Dooley's arrangements back in the Melton cabin. Splitting his time between Laura Foster and his menage a trois in the Melton household seemed to keep Dooley happy and probably pretty tired. What Dooley didn't know was that Pauline Foster hadn't come to the area just to seek employment. She also came seeking treatment for syphilis. As soon as the way with such things, Pauline gave the disease to Tom, who then gave it to Laura, and then to Ann. But because of the timing of the appearance of symptoms, Tom Dooley thought that it was Laura Foster and not Pauline Foster who had infected him. Dooley vowed revenge on Laura Foster. Laura Foster disappeared on May 25th, 1866. That morning, Foster's father woke to discover both her and his horse missing. The horse returned the next day, but Laura did not. After several weeks of searching, a rope that had been used to tie Foster's horse to a tree was discovered on the blood-stained ground not far from where Tom Dooley was living. Suspicion immediately began to fall on Dooley, and he fled for Tennessee. Excuse me. About the same time, Pauline Foster also visited Tennessee, and when she returned to Wilkes County, a friend jokingly inquired if she had left because she had killed Laura Foster. Pauline Foster, also seemingly in jest, replied that she and Tom Dooley had killed Laura together. Pauline Foster was soon arrested and charged as an accessory to murder. Fearing for her life, Pauline Foster told everything she knew. Dooley and Ann Melton had killed Laura Foster together. She led them to Laura Foster's shallow grave in the woods, and her badly decomposed corpse was exhumed. The body was also identifiable from the clothing, but the evidence of a vicious stab wound under the left breast into the heart was still there. The police learned that Tom Dooley was living in Tennessee, where he had been working on the farm of Colonel James Grayson. Dooley learned that the authorities were on to him and fled Grayson's farm. Grayson joined the search party, which caught up with Dooley in Pandora, Tennessee. Grayson persuaded Dooley to surrender, and Dooley was taken back to Wilkes County to stand trial. In a surprising move, which brought the case to national attention, former North Carolina Governor Zebulon Vance volunteered to represent Dooley pro bono. When the press learned the complicated details of Dooley's sex life, the newspapers went crazy, and the trial became a national sensation. The Yadkin Valley region was painted as a delicate bastion of free love, and the public gobbled up as many sordid details as the papers could serve to them. Man, that sounds like today, don't it? And this was back in the 1860s. My goodness. What were they thinking? Okay. Tom Dooley and Ann Melton were tried separately. Dooley was convicted. Melton acquitted. Tom Dooley was hanged on May 1st, 1868, in Statesville. Reportedly, his last words were, "You have such a nice clean rope. I ought to have washed my neck." Oh my goodness. Ann Melton died in 1874. Although the historical record is unclear as to whether she died from injuries from a carriage accident or from complications of syphilis. Although she maintained her innocence until her death, rumors that it was Melton, not Dooley, who had dealt the fatal blow, followed Melton to her grave. Interestingly enough, though, it was the more romantic version of the story that propelled them to fame. The members of the Kingston Trio knew the sordid details of the story of Tom Dooley and delighted in sharing them backstage with the various house crews they would meet on tour. All right, hope y'all enjoyed that sordid tale, okay? Obviously, I didn't know the full story of Tom Dooley until I read it back years ago. I had read it and just refreshed myself on it to do this video and watch the movie again. But the movie, it is way different. The movie is way, way different than the actual story, the real actual story. But the movie's good too, so I would recommend it. It's called The Legend of Tom Dooley, starring Michael Landon. All right, hope y'all enjoyed. See you back soon.